I've got a phone call from Bart Bulker. He asked me if I've seen a film Metro Manila, and then they sent me a script called Anthropoid, and they said it's a new project of a director, Sean Ellis.
It's very rare that a script comes to my desk and I can't put it down. And it really was one of those scripts that not only did I want to learn more about World War II, but really wanted to get in and really figure out how big of a part Prague and Czechoslovakia had during World War II.
I got sent the script and a little bit of a bio about who was involved in it and everything. I'd just seen Metro Manila, which is a film that Sean Ellis wrote and directed, and I'd literally just seen it 3 weeks before or something, and I thought it was one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. So my wife was with me and I said, I've just been sent a script by the guy who did Metro Manila, and she was like, wow, we'd watch it together. I just knew instantly I wanted to do it regardless of what it was about. Also, Cillian Murphy was already attached, so I'm a huge fan of Cillian's anyway.
I'd heard a lot about Metro Manila, but I hadn't seen it. So I watched Metro Manila, and it kind of knocked me out. I was really, really blown away by it. Myself and my wife watched it, and it kind of had a big impact on me. And then I read the script. Well, I have a very, very simple rule with reading any script, and that is it needs to keep your attention. You know, if you're reading it and then you go, oh, I really need to cut the grass or have a cup of tea or go to the shop, I'll just put it down. Then to me, it's out. But with this one, it was just straight through. You know, it was so compelling. You had to keep reading until the end. That for me, if it's that good of a read on the page, it's just only gonna get better and better.
We've seen a lot of World War II stories, and there are so many amazing stories, and there's so many more to be told. But the characters within page one, they were, parachuting in, and just, their dialogue and what they did and who they were, and I knew they were heroes, and I just felt it right away. And the people they met along the way that joined their group, and it was really, really fantastic writing, and immediately you're hooked.
I was somewhere in Polish forest, in the middle of nowhere, and my agent called me, and she said that she has something special for me. And I read the script, and I fell in love, because every time when you read something very interesting, special, you fall in love.
So I didn't ask for anything like who's in the film, who's doing it, who's directing, nothing. Just said I like it.
Sean, very early on when I agreed to do the film, gave Cillian and I a book literally called Operation Anthropoid that was like blow-by-blow account of every detail of the mission and background of both Jan and Josef's characters, and that was sort of like our Bible.
The story was new to me because I didn't know much about Czech resistance, so it was like uncovering something new about our neighbors, Czech people.
Prostě něco, co vlastně, ačkoliv jsme se to víceméně učili ve školách a známe samozřejmě někdo víc, někdo méně teoreticky.
This is probably the story in Czechoslovakia history in last 100 years.
No to je nádherný, to je skutečně radost, víte, že potom po té dlouhé době, že ještě se to takhle dělá a moc jim gratuluju teda a jsem rád, že se to pustili. Tak jsem velmi rád a ne já, jistě by to viděli i tamti, co jsou už bohužel na druhém světě.
What is your mission?
Operation Anthropoid.
What is Anthropoid?
The decision was to do it in Czech accent. Sean had decided that all the Germans would speak German, so it was very much like a foreign language. So I think it was a clever approach to it.
I was sort of terrified about the idea of that, of doing a Czech accent, because it's not Russian, which is stronger and you can hang your hat on it a bit more. It's a bit more of a definitive thing. Czechs, quite subtle, really.
I think casting so many Czechs in the movie and not all Brits really helped, because I do think our British actors really took a lot of cues language-wise from their Czech counterparts.
This is the last one. For us.
The seven of us and Sean went into the crypt. There's just this small little window of light. I just couldn't quite comprehend how these men had become, that heroic and to give all, that ultimate sacrifice.
I went to the actual spot where my character had his last breath, and it had a massive effect on me.
The first time when I walked to the church, it was the real church. And then I was in the Barandov, I was in the atelier, you see the lights and big things everywhere. And then there were those doors, which seemed like it's building out of wood. And then I opened the doors and I entered them and I was in the church again. Which was like really, I was really surprised that it can be that real.
I literally went from seeing the real church on like a Tuesday and then seeing the set on like a Thursday. And it was mind-blowing. They were literally identical. Honestly, I've never, and I feel like I maybe never will see a set like it. It was driven by Sean, but also Morgan Kennedy, who's our production designer. The attention to detail of replicating that church was like nothing I've ever seen. It was exact to scale model of the church. Honestly, the most impressive set I've ever seen in my life.
I think we would have shot in the original cathedral, but obviously because of the action that was taking place there, we decided to build it in one of the big stages in Barandov Studios. There was one point actually when they built the roof first, and then they basically raised the roof up on chains, and then they built the walls either side, and they were going to roll the walls in underneath. And we all went down there and looked at this roof, and we're looking by eye and thinking, when they roll that up, it's not going to fit, the walls aren't going to fit underneath it. And it basically fitted by, I think it was 6 centimetres. We'd build, and as we were going on, they'd keep going back to the original church to sort of check details and check sizes and make sure that everything was exactly as we wanted it to be. And yeah, it was a huge build, certainly the biggest thing I've ever built. I think it was the manager of Barandov Studios came into the big studio to see the finished cathedral. I think she was so overcome with emotion that she started crying.
There is no time. Take up defensive positions, we hold them from here. Bublik, take the upper gallery.
Heydrich's car, when we first started very early on, we tried to find a replica of the Mercedes that he was driving when he gets assassinated. There were a few options that we could have hired, but none of them were the exact car. So in the end, we made the decision to build the car from scratch. Again, to keep faithful to history and faithful to the accuracy of the story. We managed to find a Mercedes museum, and he had some of the panels and some of the original mouldings and some of the original pieces of chrome and some of the original headlights, which he would basically rent us. We made our own seats, and I think we made our own dashboard, and we made our own steering wheel and bits and pieces. I still think it was worth it.
And action!
And when the tank bomb had gone off, it had blown a big hole in the driver's rear side panel behind the driver's seat. Basically, when the car turned up, it was in perfect condition. And then after the explosion, obviously, which, in films you can't explode things for real, we then had a fake panel which had been pre-exploded or made to look like it would have been exploded, which slotted into the car, and we'd pre-smashed some of the windows and then laminated them so that they looked smashed. And it went from pristine car to blown up car in a very short space of time. The Moravets is flat was one of the real locations that we visited in Prague, one of the only ones that was left, because we had quite a lot to shoot in there, and because of the inconvenience to the people that live there, it was better to build it. And I think for the purpose of the story, we sort of wanted to change it around ever so slightly. But again, sort of going to the actual apartment from a purpose of design is amazing, because you can get the sort of sense of what it would have been like to live there when the story actually happened. One of the details that we discovered was that the tiles in the hallway and the floor were the original tiles from when the story happened. They were sort of brown with this kind of slight swastika pattern on them, which seemed like a really odd coincidence, I guess. And so we went in, we took a very high resolution photograph of the tiles, same size, and then redid the hallway and the flat in the studio with the same pattern, which, you know, again, is a lovely thing to be able to do in any set that is, you know, where you're trying to recreate history. We did a forest scene in a Ministry of Defence forest just outside of Prague, about an hour's drive outside Prague, which was the opening scene of the film when the airmen land, parachute in, land in the forest. And we covered quite a large area of the forest in paper snow.
And it was in August, so we were boiling out there. And our wonderful director and an incredible DP as well made it look like we were in, you know, Prague in January. So it worked out pretty incredible, but we were boiling out there.
One of the other locations that we had was the Gestapo headquarters, which was actually the real Gestapo headquarters in at the time the story is set. It's now a museum in the basement of the Ministry of Trade in Prague.
So it was incredibly eerie to be in that space and to know that there were so many that were executed and killed was pretty incredible. And that scene in itself is so hard to watch. I mean, it's pretty brutal.
It was my third movie and first really with international cast. That was quite pressure because we got all the cast approved pretty late, short time to produce it, but it happened. So let's start with the girls, for example. One is younger, so I used different color palettes, and also different little bit naive and romantic patterns, like little flowers. For the older woman, I use all the colors which suits Anya perfectly, which is like deep green and ginger colors, and a little bit of the reds, which always work well with the red hair. We made about 200 full outfits, let's say, if I count also the uniforms. And we have been making also lots of historical uniforms which are not existing, so it's the only movie where are the exact copies. Like, for example, the firemen's, we made like 15 of them. We made 100% copy of the Heydrich uniform. Usually when I see my work, I'm fully concentrate on my part, which is wardrobe. But after 10 minutes, when I saw the movie, I totally forget, because the story is so strong.
We did a lot of work in the battle scenes. There's a lot of machine guns going off, blood hits and puffs of smoke and muzzle flashes, and we had to make the woods look snowy, misty, frozen breath in some of the shots. Working with Sean, he's so meticulous. His research is so exact. He found photographs from 1942 in books and in the archives and in his research, and then gave these to us, and then said, well, I want to reproduce this place, the feeling of this silver gelatin black and white photograph. He reshot that old photo. And of course, it wasn't a still photograph. There were people walking around. There's all the trappings of the modern city, from air conditioning units and satellite dishes or whatever. And we sort of took all of that out, and then we added back in lots of the elements from the real photo of 1942, like tram lines and cobbled streets and signs. And he had some extras, which we multiplied many times. He had a few cars, which we managed to multiply. We really did manage to, I think, very successfully capture the almost perfectly the feel of those photographs. It's lovely working with the director like that to get more out of each individual shot. You really got the feeling that we were working on a really good film.
Before the shooting, I asked Sean, so maybe you should tell us, how do you work with actors? What do you do, like how it works? And he said, well, I talk a lot. I talk a lot, even too much. I make comments on everything. We do a lot of takes and I keep talking.
We were very lucky that the atmosphere that Sean created on set and off set was sort of familial. So everybody spent a lot of time together and socialized together, and you know, and I think that does, by sort of osmosis or weirdly, transfer onto the performances.
Both Sean and Killian create this atmosphere where, you know, you can do what you want within the limits of the scene, and you know, nothing is wrong.
There is something about Sean too, that he's operating the camera as well, and he wrote the script and he's directing at the same time. So he's really, really present, and there's something really comforting and relieving about that, because you know that every issue you could have, even with writing or whatever it is, he's there to help you.
The way he runs a set and his vision of it, I mean, he's worked on this for a long time. He knew everything. It was unbelievable. He's his own DP. He goes there, and I just would watch in awe how he, with the actors, and it just was one of those sets that he gets along with everyone. Everyone loves him. So it was really a great experience for us. It's probably, for me, maybe one of my favorite sets I've ever been on.
First time for me to have a director like behind the lens directing you. It gives you a real connection. It was very much like me, Jamie, and Sean were like making this thing together, and he was right there. Like even all the action scenes, like.
His commitment to this story, to these guys, to this piece of history, to these two heroes, was phenomenal. He'd been doing all this sort of training leading up to it for months, in terms of like a lot of the stuff was handheld, like on the shoulder. So he'd been doing all this very specific exercise. Sean had been writing this and had been in his head for 12 years before it came into actually making the movie. So he had a lot of time to think about how he wanted this movie to look. He was just so prepared physically and mentally to take on this project. I've never in my career had a director who's gone so far in terms of setting up visually how he wants the sort of major scenes to play out.
So we built a 1/6 scale model for Sean to do his storyboards with.
He managed to find a tiny Cillian Murphy doll on the internet, but unfortunately there was a Jamie Dornan doll at that time available. I'm sure there's many available now in all sorts of shapes and sizes. But he had everything photographed with the like real backgrounds and all the different camera angles with these little action men. So it was fascinating, and also again really reassuring to know that every single shot was worked out, and he knew exactly where you needed to be. There's these guys in the Czech Republic that reenact the parachutists there, the whole thing. So they tell you how to fall and how to roll and how to put away the parachute. They showed us where to keep the gun and how to load the gun and how to stand shooting the gun, and then with the Sten gun that I had, they showed how to load that and shoot it. And it's and we actually went to a real shooting range and shot like live rounds, and you realize how fucking difficult it is to hit a target with these guns.
We're under siege in this church, and these Nazis come in, and I stood up and I like fired off the gun. It was very light, the trigger, lighter than it had been at any time, like just for this take, and the gun just went off so fast, and I was like, almost like screaming, and like the adrenaline was so sort of huge with me. I had such a will to do it that I almost sort of scared myself.
Well, I think for this film to succeed, the relationship between Josef and Jan had to be, you had to feel it, you know, and it had to be real. And unfortunately, Jamie Dornan is a cock, so that was tricky. But no, change.
Killian, who was Killian? Which one was Killian? Oh yes, Killian. He's the older one. Yeah, no, he was great. He was great. I think I don't remember a lot about him.
Jamie is not just like the most beautiful man on earth. He's also very, very, very funny, and he's got no ego, which is so rare and precious. And to work with somebody like that on set is just perfect. You cannot ask for better. I remember the first big scene we had to do in the living room together, when we're talking about the mission. We just did it, and it was easy. And you know, he's not making anybody wait. He's just super present, and you feel that he's happy to be on set. You know, he's really in his element, I think.
Everyone just relax. Maybe it was a mistake not to inform you of the danger.
And I remember after doing the scene over and over again, he just went like, "Oh, well, that was fun." And I thought it was so cute and adorable. But he's married and he's got 2 kids.
As a producer, when you have an actor that not only is available to talk to anybody, but is also so incredible at his craft, you know, you just feel safe. And, you know, watching the monitors every time Killian was on, it was almost one of those things where you're like, you know the scene's going to play out incredibly well, and you know all those actors around him are going to step up because they're next to Cillian Murphy.
I need to get my family out of Prague. No one is going anywhere, Jordan. You try and run now, and they will pick you up before you reach the city limits.
And I like them two together. Jamie and Cillian, they were like good friends, or they had so many jokes and with each other. And Charlotte was fun. I really like one sentence, which is like small in the movie, and it's not a big scene, but I think that's what it's about. I think Cillian is saying that sentence, and it says, "You have to take a side."
Sometimes you have to pick a side. Would you prefer it with us?
Sometimes you can't just go fight or, I don't know, throw bombs, but you have to show your opinion, or you have to be strongly connected with your like values you feel for, and that what I like. That's the subject of the movie for me.
One of the strongest moment is when Gabčík is asking Vaněk why he's afraid of, why he's not since the first moment on their side.
I feel Czechoslovakia will be wiped from the map.
He's great because you trust him that he is really scared of that such a thing could happen to the country.
You ask me if I'm afraid? Yes, I'm afraid.
For me, as that kind of actor, it's impossible to get on a level just technically. You have to know exactly what you have to do, what you have to say, and you have to feel it. I was just trying to think, what would I do? What would I do?
I remember the moment when I was shouting down there like, "Surrender, you will be treated humanely," and everything. I remember that those guys shoot at us, and we were covering heads and everything, and then I raised my head, and for like very brief moment I felt like I'm in the real situation because, you know, I seen the surroundings, soldiers around me, guys looking at me so serious, actors in front of me. Yeah, it was intense.
The crypts at Barrandov, because it's almost identical to the real life crypt, it wasn't a struggle to put yourself in that situation.
I mean, I remember reading the script and when they're reading that the whole crypt filled up with water and you know, it's just, there's no way out. There's absolutely no way out. And then we did that beautiful shot of Lenka in the water. That was quite moving as well. Yeah, it was a really nice sort of end of shoot. That was a hard shoot in that tank as well, but it felt right. You know, we were shooting in Prague where this actually went down, you know, and it was like all the people working on the film were Czech and they really cared about it. So it was quite charged atmosphere.
The way he shot it, the audience is not getting managed. It's not like, oh, we're treating you well, we're not showing too much. Like, he shows everything. And that's good because it really happened. And it was just, you know, the tip of, you know, the iceberg of what everything happened afterwards.
These are true heroes. I mean, absolutely gave their life for a cause that's much, much bigger than them and for the world at a time where it could have gone very, very dark and everything could have changed.
Just tell me we are doing the right thing.
There's a lot of hope in his story afterwards, I think. Even though it ends in a very dark place, it brought more attention around Europe.
It's kind of like the movie has sort of two endings. You know, there's the one tragedy, and then the one that is also tragic, but in the greater scheme of things, it's a victory. So it's fascinating, and it kind of stays with you. And again, that's another yardstick by which I measure movies. They shouldn't be disposable. They should leave like a residue on your skin and on your psyche for a few days or a few weeks. That's to me what cinema should be about.
I just feel very proud that we've made what I think is a great movie. I feel proud for Sean, and I feel proud to, you know, have told a very important story in world history, not just like Czechoslovakia.
Úspěch byl největší snad z těch skupin. Tohle to bylo v celém světě vědět. O tom se vědělo, že co se tady událo. A nejen to, bylo taky zrušeno, Anglie zrušila hned tenkrát tu dohodu, potom to i Francie zrušila a tak dále a bylo to ve všude známý.
A co teda jsem si uvědomila ještě u toho, že něco jiného je teoreticky vlastně znát tu historii a nějak tak obecně si mít takový obecný pocit, že vlastně to muselo být hrozný, ale najednou jsem to viděla a dovedla jsem si daleko víc představit, co to asi všechno znamenalo a obnášelo. A sama jsem si kladla otázky, jestli bych to dokázala.